All right, so back with our Mr. E again. I just had to go grab a few little new tidbits. So he says he likes this one a little bit better. What do you think? So when warming up with the handsome guy, I know we had mentioned toys can be a great venue, working with, of course, rotation through different types of food. Excuse me. I also noticed that a lot of his snacks that were brought in were actually really, really big pieces. So, excuse me, that darn tickle is going to kill me again. So I would highly recommend, just going to grab a quick little drink, for his snacks, you want to have them like be the size of a very small pencil eraser, or like a very small pinky nail if you do keep your nails short. Again, sorry about the tickle bothering me again. Because if our training treats are really big, we tend to go through a lot more products quicker, but then also our dogs tend to get full faster. So I would highly recommend, like I tend to have my snacks, I don't know if you can see me, but itty bitty, so like teeny little tidbit. So if they're kind of hard to break, I know some of his softer training treats like the hot dog and cheese and I think and chicken, those ones I was able to break them up into even smaller tidbits. So he's gonna go get stuck. Ready? Sarah, come on this way. Nice job. He was trying to go behind my camera stand, which would be very entertaining if he took it with him. So if you're finding that he is not as food driven, it could be also he gets full much faster. So I did, again, with some of the softer ones, break them up. For the bigger ones that are like the freeze-dried liver chunks, those are great, but I tend to take like a cutting board and a knife, or if meat scissors work well. Otherwise, if he's checking out all the toys. Otherwise, if his snacks are really big, even for like the smallest dogs or biggest dogs, I tend to go for itty bitty pieces because it's gonna give you a little bit longer time to practice while also making sure that your puppies don't become so full, but also don't run into potential tummy upset. So for a lot of us, obviously having a big chunk of, let's say, a whole bunch of apples could still run to tummy upset, even though they're all very healthy. Too much of a good thing can still lead to tummy problems. So I would almost recommend for Mr. Handsome, Mr. E, is if you can, chopping them up into a little bit smaller. Ready? He's like, no, I'm already so tired. Mr. E is just a pooped out guy. So we may find for him teeny little tidbits really helpful. I'm going to see if I can practice a little bit like what we were mentioning, a little bit with our loose leash walking, getting our handsome guy focused on movement a little bit. Ready, sir? He's like, I'm thinking about it. So if he's a little bit unsure, again, we're just going to clip him to the back of the harness. Good job. I tend to, when practicing, like to, for example, feed on the side the pup's going to be on. So I sometimes like to hold my leash in the opposite side. So if he's going to be on the left or the right, whichever you prefer, I end up working with the leash on the opposite side of the pup, and then I like to feed him while he's next to me. So if, let's say, for example, he doesn't have the longest time frame for practice, make your training session short and sweet where they're successful for the few reps you might be doing, and then call it a day. It's typically better to do a couple shorter reps than to do a whole bunch. And I think for Mr. Handsome today, I think the roof is what's maybe throwing him off a little bit more than last week. Last week it was not a rainy day, but today it is. So for him, even if he's maybe not super noise sensitive at home, what could also be happening? Oh my gosh, chew them, sir. He's like, I did not chew that hot dog from like 10 minutes ago. He just hopped it up. So the problem with some of the babes is what could be happening is what's called trigger stacking. So trigger stacking is where, let's say, for example, there's one thing after another and it can overwhelm you or get you a little bit, oh, you're going to go for that one. Nice job. Ready? Ethan. Ready? So if, let's say real quick right there, yes, nice job. I'm going to feed him for that lovely name recognition. He's dropping all his goodies. So trigger stacking is where, for example, your dog might be a little overwhelmed. Maybe there was a new smell in the environment. Maybe he didn't get too much sleep. Maybe he's feeling a little bit tired. Whatever it might be, is that might be a moment where one thing after another all of a sudden makes it too hard to cope with one more last trigger or distraction. So even though your dog might be doing their darndest, ready, Ethan? Ready? Yes, good check-in, sir. Is you may have moments where you felt it wouldn't have been such a big deal, but now all of a sudden he's responding to like a scenario as if it was really flustering. So trigger stacking could be what's also happening. We'll let him relax for a second. So it's almost like, imagine people. Excuse me. Let's say, and I'm going to grab a cough drop. Might as well since I have to keep blabbing. So let's say, for example, you're rushing, you're late to work. In your time to rush, you spill your coffee, you get into a little fender bender, you on your way into the office, your boss is already upset with you. That day is just going to be just a bad day, and you may not be the happiest person come the end of the afternoon into evening. And even though you're normally pretty, friendly and easygoing, you may not have an easy time around your spouse or your family members. And it's not because you're trying to be a jerk or being, mean. A lot of times when we're at the end of our rope, we sometimes have a shorter fuse and don't do as well under pressure. So sometimes with dogs as well, it could be one more challenge on top of another, and then come this one little thing throws them off. Ready, Ethan? Ethan says, I really want the flirt pulls. So let's say my puppy's pulling. I would, as opposed to pulling back, walk down the leash, and then, ready? Try to get Mr. Ethan's attention. He's like, maybe. Ready? And see if I can get him to up and wiggle. If he's a little bit stuck, because he is getting a little tired, ready, Ethan? I might try a couple little find its, but I'm going to also grab a toy. Ready? Nice. So right here, Ethan. Ready? Find it. So for some pups, also the breadcrumb trail could be another great option. So for some of the babes, they get so stuck on the environment or the distractions that they almost have a hard time stopping the scanning of the environment. A lot of times, to help your walks slow down, going and allowing the sniffy walks are crucial. But at the same time, sometimes what I consider is the breadcrumb trail, where you might take a little snack, plop it on the floor, ready, and try to coax him to move around the environment. And this also keeps a wiggly dog or a dog that tends to jump up on you a little bit softer. He says, I'm going to go find all my crumbs now. Good job, Ethan. So part of it too is the benefit of this breadcrumb trail is it can get him to hone in on the floor versus on you. Some puppies will be jumping when they get excited or start mouthing. So this can also be a great way to slow them down and get them to kind of pause, take a moment to go grab the food, and then continue on their merry way for a few more little reps. Ready? He's like, lady, I am pooped out. So tired. Oh my goodness, what a good job sitting. So I do try to just capture anything good that Mr. Handsome's able to offer. I'm going to see if he's maybe slightly interested in my little bumper toy, see if he wants to do a little bit of play to get some movement out of the handsome guy. Ready? What do you think about this one? He's like, oh, what do you think? Does that seem intriguing? So I sometimes will just drop the gear, see if he's like, yes, ma'am. You want to try it? What do you think? He's like, it looks slightly intriguing. You bite the bumper part. He's like, I want the handles. A lot of them always tend to want to have the handles, which is always so entertaining. Of course, because that's where your fingers need to go. Ready? So we'll see. Ready? You want to try and get it? You want to get that toy? Oh, what a good boy. Ready? You going to get it? He's thinking about it. So obviously when working with him, nice, good job, is I want him to think that it can be really easy to kind of grab hold and find it appealing. Nice, good job. Oh my goodness, so smart. Yeah. So because for him, I think he's more of a toy guy, which is fine. Ready? So we're going to get him up and wiggling. And maybe I'm going to do a little bit where we're up and moving. Ready? And I bring him into my space and we get to play again. So I want him to think there's some really nice value in working sort of in and out of some play and some focus on me. So ready? Yeah. What a good boy. Good. He's like, I'm getting exhausted. Do you like the handles the better part? I know some puppies do like the handles best. So if, for example, he is first, oh, nice job. He's cobbing it. What a nice job grooming the toy. You're so sweet. He's like, and I'm exhausted. So we may find for the handsome guy, maybe I'll go ahead, let him play with it for a few moments, see if he wants to engage with it. But I want to see if I can go ahead, and he's like, yay, see if I can practice a little bit with a wait and then calling him into my space. Good job. So because let's say, for example, he's playing with one toy and now he's like going to be over there shaking it. He's so stinking cute. So this is like, again, what I kind of mentioned earlier. You could have two toys and practice this toy exchange for playing. So he's playing with that bumper toy. I might go, Ethan, ready? Get his attention on this one, and now this one comes alive. So now this way, we could go from one toy to the next. Nice job. What a smart boy. So let's say, for example, we're going to try, and ready? We'll get a little sit. Nice. So let's say I want to practice a little bit with a wait behavior. Wait would be hold back, and he's like, hold up, lady, my other toy. Is we'd want him to practice waiting and then getting called forward. So when you're working with young dogs, a lot of times incorporating play into their skill building can be really nice. So I'm going to get his attention. We're going to get that gorgeous sit. I might say again, good. And then we're going to have the toy come as that play item. So right here, I might go, Ethan, come. And then bring him good, and then into some play. So this way, for coming when called, he gets to now play with this little tuggy friend, or the tuggy friend becomes alive and we go to chase him. So you'll see that sometimes I even let the puppies just wear their gear and just drag the leash around. That can be a great way as long as it's a safe environment to do so. If he's going to get caught on something and hurt himself, I'd maybe do no gear if it's like in the home or something, if you're worried he's going to get caught on a table or something. So, but right now the toy comes alive for when you come towards the handler and we have fun together. So right now he's doing a great job just playing with my bumper toy. He's just flapping it all over the place. Oh, you're doing such a good job, Ethan. So I'm just going to go because he's out of range a little bit. I just want to see if I can bring him down this way. Ready, Ethan? He's like, let's do this. So let's say Mr. E has been liking some of my toys. I'm going to try for a second using my bumper. Yeah. And get his attention, and then see if we can go ahead and set up again for one of those little sits. And then we're going to have him wait, and then we might go, Ethan, come. Good. Nice job. Oh, what a smart boy. So remember that this conception of tug as being something bad, and it increases like aggression or reactivity or resource guarding. If you're dealing with resource guarding, that's a whole nother can of worms, so reach out. I know we dived into it a little bit with Mr. A, but we want to make sure that if your babe is struggling, ready, sit, that we help them in a way that makes sense to them, but also keeps everybody safe while learning. So even when we're trying to train things that we don't love, let's say, for example, like, again, maybe mouthiness on us, we want to try to, as opposed to scolding or getting agitated, think, well, what would I rather have that dog mouth instead? Or what could I do as an outlet for the dog to be successful as opposed to just getting scolded? So ready, Ethan? Come. Nice. Good. Good job. Nice. So when he can even like win the toy and go frolic for a few moments for coming with when called to you. So because if your babe always thinks that everything has to be earned and everything's very challenging, you may create a moment where your dog doesn't actually look forward to training because it's always like boot camp. So you want to make training easy, attainable, comfortable. I'm just going to get a little closer because you can't quite see him because it's all the way over here. Hi, Ethan, my handsome guy. Good job. So I did a little exchange for some food versus the toy. He's like, lady, I'm ready. I know, watch out, wild man. So let's say again, I might bring him into my space. We're going to try for that little sit. So the whole point of this is you're just trying to work a little bit with impulse control. So impulse control is like where your babe might be having a harder time holding back when either excitement or anxiety and things like that go a little higher. I would make sure, though, if you're practicing, that you're not just stressing out the dog to the point where they're not learning, but also that when you're working with impulse control, you want to make sure that it's an attainable setup. If we're just flooding him, like asking him to sit, stay, as here comes the Mack truck and it's really scary, that might be a situation where staying still equals danger and I can't get out of it. And then we might be ruining that skill or that cue. So we want to be really careful that when we're practicing, we're not just flooding them with information or flooding them with things that are out of their comfort range. So right here with the handsome guy, I might go, Ethan, ready? Come. Good. And right into some play again. Oh, what a smart boy. Oh my goodness. He's so cute and so soft. My guy would be like hanging onto this and I could like lift him off the floor. Ethan's building up those big boy skills. Oh, what's that strong boy? Oh my gosh. Woo. So, and again, he gets really happy when he gets the prize. So he's like, I'm frolicking over here again. So when you're practicing with Mr. E, make sure that maybe sometimes the training is not always just linear. And what I mean by that is like trying to go from point A to point B with our sort of skills in mind. We might have to work a little bit of loose leash walking in and around the yard and include play, exploration, sniffy time. And I know you mentioned he, again, is loving the flirt pole. I think you said you had one for your lovely lady at home. Good job, sir. So she might love the flirt pole, but now he can also enjoy it as well. You ready? Ready? So we'll get his attention. Oh, he says, I'm ready. That's okay. And we'll do a little sit. So I love that he's got some nice oomph in him. I love that he gets excited and wants to come and adventure with some wrestles. So I'm going to tell him to wait, give him a little second or two. Remember, just like with earlier, like I mentioned, the 3 Ds, we might work first with distance down the road and distractions down the road, but start off with duration. So like how long he's waiting might be a few seconds. Later, it could be like minutes before you release him to come to you or before you release him to go grab that toy. So we could do this beautiful little waiting, and waiting just means, sir or madam, hold back, and I'm going to either call you and feed you with a recall, and that could be come or here, whatever slogan you prefer, or it could be, again, come, and then you can go into some play or some food, whatever works. So ready? Ethan, come. Nice, take. Gorgeous. So I might tell him to take the item so that way he knows it's time to grab it. Nice. If he hasn't really done as much fetching, I'm not saying he has to be a fetcher. Ready? Go get it. But sometimes it can be really nice to do some retrieving practice with your babe. If he's not as good at bringing it back as he is grabbing it and frolicking with it, nice job, Ethan. Good job. Is you could build up with 2 of these toys, show him the new toy as he comes closer into your bubble, and then have him release the original one that might be still in his mouth to then throw the next one. And you could rotate through them that way. Nice job. What a good boy. So yeah, so smart. We want him to think there's a lot of great value, hi my love, in working these behaviors. You ready? We might even get a little sit for a second. He's like, I guess so. Oh, so tired, you had to go right into a down. So we might even tell him to wait. And he could be waiting and is supposed to, he's like, nope, he might have to go get a drink, which is acceptable. But he could be waiting, and then you could call him to you, and then you play. He could be doing a wait, and then you release him to go grab that toy. So we could go, Ethan, ready? Come. And we could feed him nice with technique toys to praise and play with the toy. And then from here, we go ready. We could get another little sit. And then we could tell him to wait, and we could go, Ethan, go get it. And then the toy could come alive. So there's a couple different ways where you could throw in that holding back until you want him to move again. He's doing a stellar job for, again, just day number 2. There are moments where he's not as comfortable, but again, everybody's different with their sensitivity level. Not everybody goes into this perfectly comfortable or confident, and that's very normal. So, but I would always gauge, is my dog taking food? If not, is he actually comfortable or is he overwhelmed? Nice job, Ethan. So, because if, let's say, he's having a really hard time with something, you may have to break it down into a couple little steps. So environmentally, if he's not really cozy, then he's not going to be learning in those bubbles either. And the behaviors you were really struggling with may never really get that much better. So when practicing with our handsome guy, I would highly recommend to, again, take a peek. See, nice job, Ethan. I'm going to take your leash off real quick. He's like, that seems weird. Excuse me. So when working with this handsome guy, you're so smart, right? We'll do a little sit if we can. Yes. So now he's taking food a little bit more readily because he's a little bit more comfortable. But when you're practicing with this gorgeous guy, remember how I sent out, or I will be sending out again, just in case he did get this material when we did the one-on-one, but create that green, yellow, and red setup where you start to figure it out almost like your set of lights. So green environments, green behaviors, green skill sets where he's doing really well and everything's attainable and reachable as a goal or as a skill set. Yellow, things are getting a little bit hairy. You know, he's having a little bit of a harder time. He's not quite as fluid. There's still a bounce back, which means that he might get distracted, but he can come back from it. Or he might get a little overwhelmed and he's still able to be functional. If we're going from green to right to red, where everything goes out the window, he doesn't know his name, he forgets the meaning of life, he gets overwhelmed or shuts down or really pulley, then those are behaviors that he's no longer learning. Or he might think the only option is go from really easy to just lose it and get overwhelmed and either react or shut down or get very jazzed. So, oh good, Ethan's going for a drink. That's allowed. So, but for homework's sake, see if you can practice sometimes gear on, gear off. You may also find for him using a long leash and practicing allowing him to trail and kind of check out the environment. And then you can go a little slower at your typical rate. And then he can actually go a little bit faster while sniffing and then taking pauses, and then you catch up and go back and forth. Nice job, sir. Because then what can be beneficial for Mr. E, he's like, I don't want my liver. You want the cheese instead? That's much yummier. So you may find for Mr. E is that working him more at his natural dog pace can also be helpful for softer leash skills. So we may find like maybe a 15-footer is more comfortable for both of you in a safe environment to do so than a 6-foot leash. So because for a 6-footer, what ends up happening is the dog has a much faster gait than we do. we tend to want to go from point A to point B, which I understand can be helpful for down the road. But when first starting off with loose leash walking skills, I normally recommend to not necessarily have a destination, but more of a how are we getting there and what are the skills that are being worked on or practiced. So we may find for Mr. He's like, please bring me all the toys. We'll maybe end on the flirt pole. But if, let's say, for example, Mr. E is doing a lot of hauling and pulling is what gets you to the next bush, to the next bush, to the next smell, to the next this, then by accident, pulling is then reinforcing his pulling. So if he's getting a lot of fun out of hauling you, then hauling must be the way you enjoy doing things because it keeps happening. So as opposed to saying no pull or knock it off or yanking back, remember that for a lot of dogs, it actually just creates this sensation of pulling against pressure. And it might make your dog even more of a puller versus softer on gear. Good job, sir. So, but we'll maybe give Mr. E a little breather. Give him a chance. Maybe we'll do a little bit of flirt pull play. And then that way he can kind of end on a really fun little note of playing. And then he did really nicely for, again, day number 2 out of the 4 weeks. So Ethan, you handsome guy. Ready? Nice check-in, sir. He's like, this is as far as I go. You're so tired. We'll give him a lovely little paycheck with that lovely find it, and we'll give him a little break. But he did so nice.